Hello, and welcome back to another edition of Thinking Like a Lawyer. I'm Joe Patrice from Above the Law. I'm joined by the other folks from, not everybody from Above the Law, but some other folks from Above the Law. Kathryn Rubino already jumped in and said hello when it wasn't her cue.
Well, it annoys you, so
It's fine, I'm sure.
I'm trying to get back.
I just tried to edit it out. So she jumped in. Yeah, well, fair. And we also have Chris Williams, who is joining us, really going above and beyond. How you feeling over there?
I feel like God kissed me with COVID. So blessed but infectious. Like
so it's
most,
like that Old Testament God, right? Where it's just like plagues. Yeah, let's kill a bunch.
Yeah. I looked behind me. I saw a salt pillar. I was like, damn it, Yahweh. Speaking of plagues.
One does.
Yeah, it's a Monday.
Oh, stop it!
That is our official plague trumpet.
No, that was the trumpet of Ezekiel.
Archangel Gabriel?
Yeah, that was Gabriel's trumpet.
Oh. Yeah, there we go. This has turned into a theology podcast real fast.
Yeah, Christopher means Christ bearer. I come bring news.
There you go.
And it sucks. The ceiling of my kitchen caved in.
Yeah, what was with that? I saw pictures. That was awful.
Yeah, apparently I didn't put enough newborn blood on my door.
I was gonna say, have you been smote? What is going on?
Yeah, you've got ceilings collapsing. You've got COVID. You're like,
I don't know if I've been smote as much as smitten with bad fortune. Because that happened. I caught the vid, which interestingly enough, on Friday, I was supposed to have somebody come through to look at said hole in kitchen ceiling, but then they didn't come around because my mom put down the wrong number. But hey, that happens when you ask somebody do your big boy tasks for you. That was my fault. But then I get sick out of nowhere. I get aches and pains, and my spine feels like I got kicked by, again, God. I take a COVID test. It comes back. I see the faintest bit of a line. Like it's about as faint as like the remaining jurisprudence on Roe v. Wade.
Oh,
and it's bad. It's bad.
Yeah.
And recent. I'm sorry. That's how it felt. But I'm like, okay. The Friday was bad. Saturday, nothing. Like it is for using like constitutional language, just like a scintilla of sickness. I'm like, okay, This is cool. Sunday, I'm great. A friend comes over. I'm like, it's probably just the flu. I take another COVID test. It says you're supposed to wait like 15 minutes. By a minute and 3 seconds, and it's like, oh, you have super COVID. Like I've never seen darker lines except for like extreme sleep deprivation. So then I'm like, I don't know what we do here now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So apologies for the extended COVID exposure, dear friend.
I think that a lot of people are dealing with very similar sorts of situations. I know I took a COVID test the beginning of this weekend before I hung out with friends because a friend of mine is traveling abroad and needs a negative PCR. She's like, hate to be that one, but please take a test before we see each other. And I was like, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, in my breakthrough, which happened a few months ago,
That was before you were boosted, right?
Before I was boosted, was incredibly mild. But it's one of those things to keep an eye out for. And, certainly ravaging New York and all.
Well, the other thing that I did this weekend, but as I mentioned, I took a COVID test. But the other thing I did as a result was spend a good portion of my time trying to track down more COVID tests.
Right.
This, in a weird way, I feel almost nostalgic for like the early days of the vaccine when it felt like the Hunger Games, like trying to get an appointment. And this felt a little Hunger Games-y. And, terrifying for the state of our society. But,
did you manage to find some tests?
That was a lot.
Yeah, but did you, man?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
I'm good at what I do.
Like, I don't understand how you didn't get that was the cue I was giving you. Like, at the end of that, you go,
I knew,
yes.
I knew what you wanted. That doesn't mean I'm going to give it to you, Joe.
Okay, fair enough.
Come now. I have been explicit on record that I dislike all of your soundboard.
I understand.
Hey, give the little drummer boy some slack here. It's Monday. He's trying to spread joy. I'd much rather that than COVID. He's trying. Not succeeding, but he's trying, and that's what's important.
Are we giving participation trophies now? Like, what's going on?
Is there a sound for that?
Thanks, everybody.
It's my fault, really.
Yeah.
I've indulged you for far too long.
I mean,
Also,
agreed.
before small talk becomes the whole show, Bob Saget died.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know. I almost saw him in do a show last month, or I guess November. It's October. It's January now, but in November, and now I'm really sad that I didn't go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the best thing that people can do to honor him is just say the most horrible, disgusting things you can say to your friends and family. That man was horrible, in a great way. As a person that appreciates comedy. If you think that Bob Saget was contained by Full House, you are out of your mind.
I mean, there's obviously the Fuller House,
but it is actually amazing that he became famous off of that and America's Funniest Home Videos, where he played the most wholesome of wholesome for so long, because he was an incredibly dirty comic, which I think is, it's a testament that he was able to get famous doing the exact opposite of what he did.
It's the power of good PR, man.
Yeah. Was at the end, or do you have your finger up there?
Well, I just was thinking that someone who has a very clear public persona and then makes a switch was something that you've been writing about today.
Oh, so you thought we would end small talk and go into our...
I thought I was going to make it so smooth you wouldn't have time to hit the soundboard.
I always have time to hit the soundboard. I don't understand why you thought that wasn't going to happen. Anyway, well, let's...
He has a point, Kathryn.
Are you on his side? This is...
Yes, he told you last week that if he had control of the soundboard, it would be even worse.
But part of that would be directed towards you, too, right?
Yeah. Kathryn has a point, Joe.
Yeah. All right, everybody.
I am on the side of chaos.
Yeah. And that's fair.
So the
you
left
and
side,
Al
really.
Michaels. I don't know if you saw the Sunday night football game this week, but the fact that it went to overtime and had it ended on a tie would have sent Vegas would have been on the hook for like $80 million or whatever.
Or more even, I don't know.
But literally Al Michaels at the end of the game was practically begging Vegas to kneel on the ball. Like, I've never seen it before. I'd like to see the world burn. It was a lot of energy.
It was a thing. Yeah.
5 times hotter than the sun energy.
Yes. So, with all that said, you did raise a point about people changing their public persona and people who, are disgraced. So, I guess we'll transition. Jed Rubenfeld, Yale professor, married to Tiger mom Amy Chua.
He's still a professor? Or is he on?
He is a professor, but he doesn't really do too much at the school since he's suspended following a sexual harassment investigation.
Yikes.
So he's been suspended for, 2 years and isn't back yet. But look, there's a dance, I think, that happens in these worlds. When you get disgraced, you have two options to kind of approach it with humility and contrition, or double down and start blaming cancel culture, and appears as though he's taking the other path.
Well, there you go.
So he wrote an op-ed today about the Biden vaccine mandate and argued that it's not constitutional, but his argument for why it should be struck down. And I guess technically he didn't go all the way to constitutional. He said that there were some administrative law reasons as well. But the crux of his argument was that Omicron still spreads and people who are vaccinated are still getting it. So therefore, there's no justification for vaccine mandates, which, and I mean, I guess this goes to Chris's current situation, but I
people
don't
that wear
know
bulletproof vests still get shot, so you shouldn't even really wear them, to be honest.
Right. Yeah. It's just comically bad. Well, and he writes this with a Nobel Prize winner for a virologist who won the Nobel Prize in the past, but it's also a virologist who has written in his own self-published journal that DNA emits electromagnetic radio waves, and that he believes in homeopathy. So he's kind of on the outs with his own profession as well. So this is, like how Marvel said that Endgame was the most ambitious crossover of all time. I feel like Jed and this guy is an ambitious crossover.
He has a Nobel Prize? How long ago?
2008.
Has he just like lost the plot?
It's
like,
because
what?
he discovered he was part of a team that discovered the actual HIV virus, which I don't know. I mean, it's not like they were going to find that eventually anyway.
Wow.
Yeah. So these two, the Algonquin Roundtable here, teamed up to explain that because Omicron can still be caught by people, therefore, there's no justification to have a vaccine mandate at all. And it's really comical.
It doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, they cite a non-peer-reviewed study that suggests that the vaccines alone have a minimal, if not a negative, relationship with catching Omicron. Like there's some way of reading this data to suggest that being vaccinated actually makes you more likely to get Omicron. Is the argument they're making. That said, that is not really the crux of the conclusion of that non-peer-reviewed report, which, putting aside that it's non-peer-reviewed, at this point, it also concludes that boosters help and that therefore you should get boosted. So I don't know as though it's really as conclusive evidence as they say. And to the extent that that's the conclusion of it, they blow it off as, well, this is early evidence. This is early and we can't really put much reliance on it. But they are putting sole reliance on the rest of its conclusions. It's bad.
Well, I mean, my brain hurts.
They cite he talks about in this op-ed about Jacobson, which we've talked about on this show before, that ultimately states have some police power rights to overcome what would otherwise be unconstitutional forced medical care in the interest of protecting public health. Mm-hmm. That is a thing that exists. That said, I don't quite know why that plays into the OSHA mandate, but putting aside that, he goes on this extended jag in the article about how Jacobson wouldn't apply here because if you can still get Omicron with the vaccines, then therefore it can't meet the requirements of Jacobson because Jacobson would require proof that the vaccine reduces transmission, which...
That doesn't seem dispositive.
It doesn't. It's actually weirdly getting it backwards because he then even acknowledges, and by acknowledges, I assume some editor forced him to put this in, acknowledges that there is reason to believe that the vaccines reduce the severity of the cases. And he says, well, it would have to reduce infection rates, not severity. And I'm like, why would that be? Because it's not that Jacobson said there's a police power interest in reducing infections. It said that there's a police power interest in public health and public safety, and reducing infections would meet that. If you said, we don't want our ICUs overrun, that would seem to fit the public health and public safety
1,000%
provision anyway. So it doesn't even make sense. Like, he gets this backwards, and all I could think is, it's really something, this kind of like cancel culture dance of like, and it's true of both this doctor and him. Like, they could have approached their screw-ups with, I'm sorry. And instead, they've just decided to embrace the fact that there are these kooks who are going to love them anyway. And it doesn't matter, how far afield of their professions they're going.
Jesus.
I don't know. You know what I thought of when I read this? Like this, the thing that was going through my head the whole time through this Wall Street Journal op-ed was...
I'll allow it.
Okay.
I'll allow it. But I'm also horrified, which, true. But also, this is not entirely surprising, right? Rubenfeld has previously represented anti-vaxxers and
yeah, it's
so
his
this
new
is,
thing.
Yeah.
You got to find friends somewhere. And I'm not saying that the anti-vaxxer community is a community that doesn't really care that much about sexual harassment allegations, but I'm not saying that anti-vaxxers are a community that doesn't care about sexual harassment allegations.
This is a not very cheerful way to start.
Well, hey, Yale. Woohoo.
I mean, people go to Yale to be lawyers, and you would
actually
think...
people don't really go to Yale to be lawyers. They go to Yale to become dictators of small countries. But
they do offer various degrees.
Yeah, but you went to law school to be a lawyer, not an accountant. So take advantage of Nota, a no-cost IOLTA management tool that helps solo and small law firms track client funds down to the penny. Enjoy peace of mind with one-click reconciliation, automated transaction alerts, and real-time bank data. Visit trustnota.com/legal to learn more. Terms and conditions may apply. So, Kathryn, what can get you fired from your job?
Slapping a coworker?
Sounds
Allegedly. We're talking about COVID, obviously, and Chris, we don't wish COVID on anyone, but one thing that COVID did do in the sort of waning moments of 2021 was cancel a lot of holiday parties. And some people might have kept their jobs if certain holiday parties had been canceled.
Gone forward.
I'm just saying. So story I wrote about a general counsel, and there was a holiday party, and he admitted that he had alcohol, but said that he wasn't intoxicated. There are allegations and first person reports that the GC slapped a colleague.
Wait, did he pull the "I didn't inhale" defense?
Well, he said he just wasn't drunk, and his justification. This actually is the thing that makes you go in this story. So that he was trying to act out with his colleague police de-escalation tactics.
Well, nobody was shot, so.
Okay, so I'm going to
there is a W there.
Well, can I take an aside here? So I watched some commercial, I was watching some CBS stuff the other day, which meant I saw a commercial for that show Blue Bloods, and it just kept striking me that there's
and every 85-year-old woman.
I didn't watch the show. I watched this commercial, and and frankly, maybe if you watch the show, it all makes sense. But the way the commercial is cut is there's a guy like in an interaction, a bodega sort of situation with a plastic shield, and he gets angry at the clerk and smacks the shield. So it doesn't hurt anybody, but just smacks the shield. And it immediately cuts to two cops going, "Whoa," and grabbing for their guns. And I was like, that seems like the opposite of a de-escalation technique, and frankly, a terrifying testament if this is how TV presents the appropriate response to this.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
I had 4 cops pull up on me one day when I was playing Pokemon Go.
I mean, yeah.
That game at its height was actually incredibly dangerous for people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but hey, you got to catch them all.
Yeah.
I suppose you do.
But
anyway,
drunken party.
Drunken party, GC says that he was just demonstrating de-escalation tactics, but just says he did grab a colleague's shoulder without getting their permission. And after the whole hubbub, said that it was in his best interest to just resign so that I believe it was the Denver airport GC so they could continue to go about their business without the distraction of the allegations that he denies. So, that happened, but also serves as a good reminder that the legal profession continues to have a problem with substance abuse. And if you're having a problem, please seek help.
Okay. Yeah. No,
I mean, that's one of the things I definitely thought of when I was writing it is, we at Above the Law write a lot about drunken antics. And I think that, at first it's pretty fun. And then you start seeing all the data and reports that, substance abuse is a real problem for the profession, more so than most professions. And so it becomes a little worrying and a much part of a much bigger issue than just, one party that went off the rails.
Or it's not a train thing. It's an airport, right?
Okay, went off the runway? Yeah, that's not a thing. That's not a thing.
You can't let him get away with that.
I got to hold the line. You shall not pass.
Now that's an appropriate reference because every interaction I've ever had with the Denver airport is the PA announcer going, "Yep, you're not going anywhere." So that works.
Everything. There's too much snow.
All right. Well, so she's broken.
Aren't we all in a little way? I mean,
season 3 of COVID has not been my favorite.
No. I mean, bringing cousin Omicron in was
it's just a
weird choice.
Desperate bid by the producers to keep us all tuned in.
Did y'all see the new variant? It's like a mashup of Delta and Omicron. It's like Deltacron. I'm not making that doesn't make sense. There are more letters. There are more Greek letters we can still use. No. They're starting to unionize. They're grouping together and
wait. No, actually, the mashup that I saw is Flurona, which is
That's also a thing.
Yeah.
But Flurona is not like a super bug. It's just having 2 different infections at the same time, which is distinct biologically.
It's like an Arnold Palmer.
Yeah, which is a delicious, tasty treat, particularly if you put a little vodka in there.
Mm-hmm.
which turns it into a John Daly. Anyway.
That is a deep cut golf joke, Joe.
It's not really all that deep cut. He just won a tournament with his son. Anyway.
It's pretty deep.
Fair enough.
It's pretty deep.
Anyway, so we've gotten a little disjointed here. Maybe it's time that we do.
We're following the logical flow of conversation, Joe. This is an issue.
We should streamline things.
Okay, fine.
Like administrative tasks.
God damn it! Ad read, go.
So let's hear from Lexicon.
Here's a message just for the attorneys out there. So you passed the bar, joined a firm, or even built your own. Now are you finding out that you're doing more administration than actual law practice? Lexicon can help. Lexicon is a legal services and technology provider with over a decade of experience streamlining administrative tasks like timekeeping, HR, billing, client intake, and more, so you can focus on maximizing billable hours and increasing client satisfaction. Call 855-4-LEXICON or visit lexiconservices.com/go to learn more.
Hey.
I don't even remember what story we're supposed to do next, but I hope it's okay that I'm going to laugh through most of it.
Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted. Convicted of helping in a sex trafficking operation.
Oh no, we actually broke Chris. You can't make someone with COVID laugh.
Hey, I laugh from time to time. That's just a thing I do. It's just I did not expect to laugh about. Hey, I'll be fine, hopefully.
So,
anyway, get all our giggles out first.
Anyway, this verdict though is now in some degree of limbo because a juror then spoke out quasi-anonymously, gave first and middle name, not full name, spoke out claiming that he felt there was some resistance in the jury to a guilty verdict until he explained that he was a victim of sexual assault and therefore, and sexual abuse, I should say, and that he therefore could explain how to read the testimony of some of the victims who, like, when they didn't remember certain details and so on and so forth. And he felt that, or at least he told the media that he felt that his experiences helped sway the jury. Another juror then came forward and said the same thing, that they also were victims and spoke to the jury and felt that also helped the jury come to a conclusion.
Well, that seems like information that people would have wanted to know.
So here's the deal with this is information that the defense wanted to know. And in fact, they put together a questionnaire with a number of items on it, including, do you or anyone have they ever had these experiences? And the reason was a plan to not have those people be on the jury.
Sure.
The juror in question, the first juror says that he would have answered that truthfully, but he honestly doesn't remember it on there. There's also some reason to believe that based on the questions asked at the screening when jurors came back after the questionnaire and were brought in to have questions asked of them, based on some of those questions, it appears that some people did get callbacks even though they had answered that question with yes. That said, neither of these two jurors were asked any follow-ups about this issue. The defense is claiming they need a new trial. If these jurors did lie or mistakenly fail to acknowledge this, perhaps that would be enough to get a new trial.
So there are two kind of variables, right, that are going on. The first is whether or not the question was responded to accurately.
Right.
If they both wrote yes and there were no follow-up questions asked.
Yeah.
Over.
I agree.
Right? That's
your fault. Yeah.
Seems to me, it seems like poor lawyering.
Personally, I think it's poor lawyering even, and like I haven't seen this questionnaire,
sure.
So who knows? But if it's remotely plausible that somebody could say, I honestly don't remember that question, that says to me that there are more questions on this questionnaire than there probably needed to be. And this goes to, having done some of these sorts of things before, there's an impulse, especially among high-priced defense teams, to try and micromanage who the jury is with a bunch of psychological vectors and jury consultants and whatever. And at a certain point, when you try to micromanage so much, you make mistakes. And if you had 200 questions and somebody, could accidentally have answered it incorrectly because they're trying to get through a 200 question questionnaire, like that's also on you. Like you need to be making these questions impactful, because brevity is the soul of a questionnaire, I think. And you need to be making it clear that these are the important issues, and make sure that the person filling it out knows how important it is, because there's only 10, 12 questions.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so that would be my take. I would kind of put some blame on the defense too. That said, you all reasonable, benefits of the doubt at this stage should go toward defendants. So you probably would pull the trigger and do a new trial anyway. But yeah, that's what you get when you try to overplay things.
Yeah.
If anybody else has thoughts on juries, I may be on one this week. That's a whole thing.
You have jury duty?
I do. They have already told me that I didn't have to come in the first day of it, so that's why I'm here.
Well, yeah, I think that the court systems are dealing with this Omicron their own way too. But it'll be interesting. It'll be very interesting to see if a lawyer, former criminal defense attorney / current legal industry commenter can get themselves on a jury.
I mean, one wouldn't think that anybody would want me there, but stranger things, I suppose, have happened.
That's fair.
I want to get jury duty, because the first thing I'm going to say is, I wrote a paper about how jury nullification should be understood by everybody as a right.
Yeah, that'll get you off pretty quick. Yeah. See, but on the other hand, though, that's the thing. Like, the kind of platonic ideal of court is that you're on some sort of a criminal jury, but the odds are actually that you won't be, that you'll be on some absolutely inane civil dispute between two companies.
Slip and fall in the grocery store.
Or maybe some slip and fall, like whatever it is, you're going to be involved. You're not going to be on a case where jury nullification is really the issue.
I'm going to make it the issue.
I mean, that's why I honestly, like, being a former criminal defense attorney is a whole deal. But I think that what I do now with Above the Law is more of a reason why nobody in a civil trial would want me on there, because I'm probably more annoying to the judges, well, the lawyers, and definitely the judges on that issue.
It would be cool to see the daily story updates.
Yeah, right.
It's right on the front page, like punny title here.
I think I was called for jury duty when I was at ATL, but I never had to fill out a questionnaire. I just kind of was in the holding room pen for like 3 days, and then they sent me away.
Yeah, I was in the pen for 3 days while I was with Above the Law, and then never even got called into a box. And the other time I did it was before I worked here, when I was actively a criminal defense lawyer, and that time I did get called into a box, and they kept me. So I had to do a 2-day trial. Yeah, it was amazing. I was shocked by that one. But
when I was in college, I was made an alternate on a civil trial, but it settled. So I didn't actually get to be on, which was, I kind of wanted to. My dad was at the time a court officer, and it was at his courthouse. And I was like, my dad was going to take me out to lunch every day. I was kind of into it, but didn't happen.
Well, I think we've done everything we need to do, right?
I hope so. I'm done. Or right. I feel like this is all that we were contractually obligated to do.
Okay, fair enough. Well, let's finish this up so that Chris can go rest again. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just
I awoke from my slumber to contribute to this phenomenal podcast. So
thank you.
As soon as we're done, I'm gonna hang upside down like a bat and.
Okay, not sure that works, but okay.
No. I used to be a biker. I have strong legs. It makes sense.
Okay. I wasn't doubting that you could do it. I was doubting that it would be efficacy of doing it. But I love that that's the direction you took that.
My job here is
Thanks, everybody, for listening. You should be subscribed to the show so you get new episodes when they come out. You should give us reviews, stars, write something, helps more people find the show. You should be reading Above the Law so you read these and other stories as they happen throughout the week. You should check out the Jabot, Kathryn's other show. I'm on the Legal Tech Week Journalists Roundtable every week. We have more shows that we are not on the Legal Talk Network that you should check out. Thanks, as always, to Lexicon and Nota, powered by M&T Bank, for sponsoring the show. You can see us on social media. I'm at Joseph Patrice. She's at Kathryn1, that numeral 1 there at the end. Chris is at Rights for Rent. Is that everything?
Read Above the Law.
You should also be following ATL blog. It helps me.
Oh, yes. That's true.
That?
Yeah, that's
Stop
a good point.
Unfollowing? Jesus.
Everybody start following at ATL Blog, because that's a Twitter account that's easy. You get all the stories as they come out, plus a few occasional fun jokes, etc. That
Peace.
That is everything.
now puts us at the end. All right, good. Bye, everybody.